Okay, my name is Amisty, and the focus of this panel is to discuss the different types of publication there are available to help authors and aspiring authors with their final steps and getting their work out there. So to start off, could you guys please introduce yourselves and state your preferred method of publication?
Sure. So my name's Aaron Beauregard. My probably better known works are Playground and Slough. My preferred method of publication is self-publishing, but I do use some small presses, particularly internationally. And I've done a few things with small press in the past.
Hello, I am Krista Carmen. My debut novel, The Daughters of Block Island, came out, I don't know what year anymore, a year ago, 2 years ago. If you quarter week 2025, came out in 2023, and my newest novel came out the end of 2024. And both are published by Thomas and Mercer, which is an imprint of Amazon Publishing. But I'm here to tell you why Amazon Publishing is not just the big bad that you think it is. So, she's a plant. Got my own.
So, yeah, you're here to represent big games. Hi, I'm Victoria Dalby. I have worked pretty exclusively with the small to mid-sized publishers. And was that the main part of this? Oh yeah, and I forgot what the question was. So I worked mostly with small and mid-sized publishers, and my first novel came out with Chizine, which is now a defunct publisher called The Parasite Life, which hopefully I will re-release myself this year, now that I have the rights back to it. And so I'll make a foray into some self-publishing as well. And then I've been working with Clash Books for the last 2 books, and I'm contracted for 2 more with them. So, and they're a fun publisher to work with. So my first short story collection came out, The Femme Grotesque, in 2022 with Clash. And then the book 1 of a trilogy, Clean Shaved, Resurrectionist for Hire, came out this past fall with Clash as well. So that's where I've been working the last couple of years, or who I've been working with the last few years.
Hi, I'm Christopher Triana. My most famous works are Gone to See the Riverman and Full Brutal. I've been writing my whole life, but I've been writing professionally for about 15 years. And I have published with some semi-bigger horror publishers like Cemetery Dance, and then I've also done self-publishing as well. And yeah, I'm just here to answer any questions.
Well, could you, on the other hand, name any cons to your preferred method of publication?
Let's be first.
Yeah, you can start.
We're starting.
Any conventions?
No, like
cons.
pros and cons, but
Pros and cons. Yep, for self-publishing.
no.
Any.
Any parts, okay, all right. Yeah, I'm deaf apparently. The pros of working with a publisher is, you don't have to pay for the production. So, an editor, cover artist, and whatever kind of publicity that the publisher does, whether they have a following on social media or newsletter. So there are benefits to that. The cons are you don't have full control. Sometimes you might end up with a cover that you're not crazy about. Sometimes the publishers will rush it and the editing won't be great, and that can be an embarrassing reflection on your writing. And also the big con of it is that you make a smaller percentage of royalties. Whereas when you self-publish, you make all of them, you get 100%. So I did a lot of publishing with presses, smaller presses and stuff, until Aaron down here helped me out learning how to self-publish my own stuff. Because he's really good with that kind of stuff, and I'm not very computer savvy. But he helped me tremendously with that. And so since then, I've been doing a lot of self-publishing because I've gotten to a point in my career where I don't really need these presses like Cemetery Dance to really help me out. I'm already kind of known now. So by self-publishing, I was able to start writing full-time. So I could afford it. So I was getting 100% royalties instead of splitting them with the publisher. But the con of doing it yourself, the first is the pros. The pros is that you make all the money and you have complete control. You can decide what the cover looks like or whatever. So that's a huge benefit. But The cons of it is that it's going to cost you more. If you want to do an audiobook of it, you could be paying up to $1,000 or maybe more for a producer to do the audiobook. You'd be paying $500 to $1,000 for cover art, depending on how good you want it. But I know for a lot of authors, it's hard to justify spending that amount of money if you're just starting out, because you don't know if you're ever going to make that money back. But what I always tell people is you have to think of it as an investment. You're investing in your career and in your future. If you're going to go cheap on your books and they're not going to be well edited because you didn't bother getting an editor, or if they're going to have a cheesy looking cover because you didn't want to get a good artist, that's not going to help your book sell. It's going to hurt you. So you want to think of it as you're investing in yourself, even if you're going to go into the red putting the book out, because you never know down the road. Like some of my books, it was 3 or 4 years before they picked up and everybody started reading it. You never know which book is going to take off, and then when it does, then you'll be making that money back. So you got to think of it as an investment.
Well, I think to jump off of that, one of the other challenges, especially if it's leaning into the self-publishing, is that you essentially have to wear every single hat. And I think it's also important, not everybody will excel at marketing, let's say, or like that nitty-gritty of formatting and things. So I think one of the appeals of working with a house is that there are people who specialize in that as their job. And so that is, I think, attractive if you have no inclination to learn that. I think when, I think a lot of people will put out a book themselves and they'll be like, I'm getting no sales. It's like, great, you're gonna have to be doing tons of marketing, you're gonna have to be building lists, you're gonna have to be doing a lot of things. And I think that can be challenging because it's not necessarily in everyone's wheelhouses, especially if with creatives aren't naturally sales oriented. And so those are all skills you have to learn in addition to the writing craft. So I think that, for me personally, I came from a sales background, but had very low inclination to do it myself. I feel like you should just do it yourself. I don't want to. So I've always been attracted to the team aspect of being able to hand it off for parts and get it back. So I think the pros of working with the small to mid presses is they tend to be less editorial in their notes. They tend to let the works be whatever they were. So they tend to not have as many structural notes or big things. That work can kind of stand on its own, which I like. And I always have it written into my contracts to have more say on covers, because I do take covers really seriously and I don't want to just get mashed up. So I often am, if anything, a little bit difficult sometimes about covers and specifically fonts, because it's important to me to have some control over that. So I do think with the smaller ones, you do get a little more say on that if you ask for it. So I think that can be a pro. I think the con is the smaller ones don't have the budget for aggressive marketing campaigns and large reach. So you do end up having to do a lot of that yourself. And I do find I do a lot of that myself. So you are kind of existing in between limbo where they are not big enough to roll out a red carpet for you, but also you do get some support, whereas otherwise you would be your PR. You would be answering the emails. You are the person sending out those press releases. You are the one scheduling all of your events. And so I think if you're not naturally good at those things and you have a great book, that can hurt you because you have to sell your own product, and that can be difficult. To just be all those things and wear all those hats, because in other industries, people all do different jobs. So that's something I think is challenging. But then as it gets bigger and you go to a bigger company, you lose aspects of the product and what you're making because they are trying to sell it. So they need something they can sell. And so you do lose some of your creative control. So I think those are those. But they also have a lot of natural, much larger reach, so they can get to more people. So you're trading one thing for another, and I think that's always the compromise.
Okay, so trying not to repeat anything that anyone said thus far. So I guess I'll just talk a little bit about, obviously I took the more traditional path. So when I finished my novel, so a couple novels ago, I finished a novel and then I went out and I queried agents, and I I don't know how like much detail I want to get into each step. I guess if people have questions afterward, I'll go more nitty gritty. But so I queried agents, and then I got an agent, and then we took the project that I had secured the agent with, and we went out and we submitted to traditional publishing houses. And the first novel actually did not get picked up by any publishing houses. We got a lot of like great feedback. Went back and did some rewrites, and ultimately we were not able to sell that. So I went back kind of to the drawing board, wrote my next novel, and then same thing, you go out on submission, worked not many rewrites on this one, but got a traditional publishing house with Thomas and Mercer. So like I mentioned before, a lot of people, it is confusing because there's, Amazon, you can self-publish on Amazon, you can use Kindle Direct Publishing. So Amazon, the way a lot of like big companies own, things like the Washington Post or these entities, there are numerous imprints that are traditional publishing houses that are owned by Amazon. So like Lake Union, maybe you see on the spines of your book, Lake Union, Thomas and Mercer, there's a children's picture book imprint. So my imprint is Thomas and Mercer, and they do mostly thriller.
Buy them? Were they publishing houses that Amazon then bought?
I'm actually not sure. I think it might be a mix of both. Like they might have grabbed a couple and then started others to fulfill all the genre. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No. So I think like one of the cons is, from what I think of as traditional publishing, I kind of think is a con of a lot of things these days, and that's just there are so many paths to publishing that it's hard to get kind of noticed and out there with your work no matter which path you take. So even if you have a traditional publisher, or even if you are great with self-publishing, and you have to do a lot of work no matter what you do, and put on some of those hats no matter which path you take. For me personally, I like being with a more traditional publisher because I have a full-time, I work at Pfizer full-time, and my job takes up, tons of hours out of my day, and I have a 4-year-old, so like that also takes up all of the other hours. So for me, and I'm trying to write a book a year, a novel a year, so for me, there's a lot of value in writing the book and then having the people that wear all those hats. So I, don't have to do as much I don't have to design a cover. I don't have to, I get, and I also get a pretty good amount of control. They give me multiple options. I get to give my feedback. And I know we're supposed to be talking about cons, but I will say a huge pro for working with this publisher is the editing has been, the editing process is just beyond what I ever would have expected. It's kind of like, so I have a editor, the acquiring editor that originally picked up my first book. I still work with her on each book. So I have a whole set of developmental edits with one editor, multiple rounds. And then I go to another whole separate editor and I get a whole set of developmental edits on another round. And then it goes to copy editing, which is, they check dates and, make sure everything lines up kind of like fact-wise. And then it goes to proofreading. And then it goes to a sensitivity reader. And then it goes to a cold reader. So there are so many steps. And I personally, love that because it helps me just, go over the book as many times as I want to go over it. So yeah, I think I kind of rambled a little bit. I don't know if I think the biggest con, again, just to kind of highlight, to make sure I answer the question, there are some things that I kind of find myself thinking like, oh, what do you mean I have to do this? Because I thought being with a traditional publisher, I wouldn't have to do this as much. Something like some publicity stuff and some marketing stuff, and but like I said, I think you end up doing some of that no matter where you're at. Unfortunately, it is not, 1980s Stephen King selling Carrie where they're gonna talk about rolling out a red carpet. Like, I think most of the time these days, the only authors that are getting red carpets rolled out for them are Stephen King and then like celebrity authors, so.
Yeah, so people hit on a lot of stuff already. I'm gonna try not to reiterate too much, but I think there is an important distinction to make. You know, if you're going down a self-publishing path, as far as what Chris said, the revenue, if you're going to try to do this for a living, which is kind of a Herculean effort to do it, you have to think about Amazon. They're a distributor, right? So, but they're going to take a cut of the royalty just as a publisher would. So let's say your royalties start out 100%, right? And then your book goes into Amazon. If I'm self-publishing it, they're going to take like 30% of that. So now think of the next step being like another publisher, right? That goes before it, in between that process. So that publisher could take 50%, potentially, maybe more, depending on how well established they are, of the 70. So some people will be like, oh, I'm making 50%. Really, you're not. You're making 50% of 70. So it could really like narrow down quickly. So I think like that, in my eyes, that I always looked at that as a large con, you know, revenue. But again, kind of tying back to Chris's point, it's like there is a substantial upfront investment, not in just dollars, but also time, you know. When I first was learning all this stuff, there was a massive curve where you'd have to just come home from work and work on it for like 5 hours. And I'm not talking about just like writing, I'm talking about figuring out formatting, all these things, marketing. So yeah, lots already been said, so we'll move on with the questions.
So if an author is looking to get their book out there as quick as they possibly can, which method would you recommend? And on the other hand, which method would you say to avoid?
Well, I'm a little confused about the speed. If it's that someone's like, I gotta get this book out like now. That I guess because I think what we've all probably experienced here is actually very little in publishing happens fast. Like most things are pretty glacial, or especially if you're sending out for acceptance or rejection. Depends on who, like some of those places can hold it for 6 months to a year. Some of them have exclusives where you can only send it. I've been stuck in that where like I had a novel like that's lived in limbo and they're like, well, we're a maybe, but it's an automatic no if you show it to anyone else. But we also won't tell you when we're gonna get back to you. So it just floats like in the ether. And it was there for like 2 years. And so I don't think any of this should be done with speed in mind, because I think also, and this is something you see a lot of, even if 1 million people look over it, I bet if you really, really look, you could find an error or some weird little snafu in literally every book that's ever come out. So I think speed, even 1 million hands on it, there's still errors. So anything that's fast is gonna up the chances that things aren't gonna be perfect or in good quality. And so I think that I would say, what's the rush? Would probably be like, remember, like, it's great that it's done, but I think that you probably want to make sure that a lot of eyes have been on it, that it's been edited very thoroughly, that it's had, you know, any kind of friends, any other readers, you know, that everyone has, like, you've had people look at this, because I think sometimes writing is so solitary, and you become, like, the distortion with the project, because you're like, this is great, but like no one has seen it, it might need some extra work. Or it might actually be very good, but you are too close to it and you're like, this is terrible, I should just throw this away and never let anyone see it, and it actually might be good. So I think taking advantage of like anyone in your life who would look at something, take a read, give you honest feedback, like, and like a big one is this ready? Is this ready to go out to places or to be in the world? Because it might not be ready, especially if you're a new writer, it might need some more work or some more eyes on it. So I think before, and then once I think it's done, looking at what do you want a writing career to look like? Do you want to be self-publishing? Do you want this to be your new job? Because it will be a job. And so I think, you know, or is it more you just want people to read your stories? Because if so, it might make more sense for you to take the time to submit out and see if anyone wants it, because that would be a lot less on you to do that work, and it's just kind of. So I think that more it's like, what is the project would be more the question than the time frame. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, to your point though, I think what she's saying is like, with the questions like, Chris had a story, for example, with Cemetery Dance Magazine. that he wrote over a decade ago, right? They paid him for it, but, you know, it still hasn't been published.
It's taking forever to put on their magazine.
Do they have it in their contract how long they can hold the exclusives?
Yeah, they do, but
It's 10 years?
no. But, no, I could do something with the story if I wanted to, but, anyway, Aaron, you go ahead.
Yeah, but basically, like, you know, if you're getting in with a publisher, the publisher has a slate, right? There's X amount of books any publisher is going to release in a year time frame or however long, right? For you to be one of those, you might be getting, like, you might have been working on that book 5 years already. You might have done all the things that Vicky said, right? And it's ready to go. And finally, you've landed a publisher. Do you want to wait that allotted time? Maybe they're 2 years out on their releases. You know what I mean? That there could be just a line of people in front of you, essentially. So that's another reason where you could say, oh, the book is ready. I have had everybody read it. It's been edited. Then maybe you think about the self-publishing route. You know, I think that's more the question of in regards to like speed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so to your point, the traditional publishing, so I usually, I mean, I obviously have only worked with one publisher, but the way it seems to go is that it takes, if you're like new to the publishing house, you know, there's some startup kind of work, there's some contracts can take a little bit to sign. They might want to do extra editing on the first novel before you get that out there, but it's usually 1 to 2 years. So the Amazon publishing imprints are pretty quick. That's another pro to working with them is even all those steps that I mentioned, like the multiple editors, the copy editing, the proofreading, the even like the back cover copy production, all that. It's so much like a well-oiled machine. It's just, and now I have a third book coming out in October, and I just went through it all again, and I mean, even like, so they do it dozens and dozens of times every month for all their authors, and even me just doing it for the third time in a row, it's become like clockwork. So they're really good at kind of churning things out on a yearly basis, and from what I've heard with the like more traditional, I guess the traditional publishing houses like your Simon & Schuster, Penguin, Random House, they can be like 2 years out. So when you sign with them, like if you signed with them, say January of 2025, your book would maybe have a release sometime in like early 2027. But from what I've seen with mine, it's like I signed with them in 2022, and then my first book came out 2023, and then I'll have one each year.
Well, it's part of the review, again, with the more traditional route, as far as like if it's going to go out for certain types of reviews or like a Publishers Weekly or Reader's Digest, or not Reader's Digest, but like Kirkus and all of those, they want usually 6-month lead time. A lot of magazines, if they're going to do any kind of a feature with that, they want them like, so a lot of this stuff, it's all happening behind the scenes because it is like months and months and months before, or also if you're scheduling for like guest events or like a national, like a book tour, these things are usually booked like a year plus in advance. So I think a lot of that isn't just not doing anything. It's like usually setting up a lot of things that take longer. So I think that's also part of that, which again, if you're going to be doing it yourself, you will be the one who is booking those things or having to know those timelines if you want to have your stuff reviewed or to try to get into being considered for certain things or getting a certain amount of press. You will be the one having to know those dates and making sure that you're sending it in during those dates. So I think that's also like, if you are still trying to play within those spheres, you're still going to be like beholden to the time frame, but you'll just have to know when and how to send those things out, which is tough because some of those places, they won't let you, if you send it yourself, they want an agent or like it has to be sent from a publisher, like they won't let, like they lock out a lot of self-published writers from a lot of the more like traditional review sites and things. So it's tricky. Like,
Great to pay.
yeah, it's a pay to play. Yeah, but that's a lot. That's like all of this pay to play.
Okay, so have any of you ever had a publisher attempt to change more than you were comfortable with on your book? And if so, how and where did you draw the line on that?
Yes, Aaron, when I was editing the story for Lexi Anthology.
Do you like?
No, she's great. She's great. I have a little story. I signed a 3-book deal with a publisher that sort of the point of it was like a serialized thing with 3 books, right? Anyway, with these, these small presses, sometimes they go through a lot of changes. They can have fallouts. Ownership can change hands, which is what happened in this scenario, like the ownership of the press changed hands. So the contracts are then forwarded to the new people, and the new people that came in said that they wanted to release the books in a consolidated collection. So instead of me getting 3 releases out of it, essentially, series, they wanted to just put it all into one. And that wasn't the vision for the book. That wasn't how, it was agreed upon in the contract to be released. So at that point, that's why it's important to read your contracts, make sure you understand what you're getting into. Fortunately, that was, a violation of the contract. So I just took the work back at that point. I bought out the covers that we were going to have anyway. I just reached out to the artist because he owned the rights still. And I released them myself. So that's one situation. Another one recently happened where I wasn't really happy with the cover of how an international publisher was going to be releasing my work. But there's also, I think it's important to make a distinction that there also has to be a certain amount of compromise when you're working with companies, right? So I don't want to, kind of throw a hissy fit and be like, I'm going to pull the book that we've done all this work on already because I don't like the cover. And ultimately, you got to think, this is a different market. This is an international market. Maybe I don't have a full grasp of like what sells there, and even if I'm not happy with it, maybe it actually does make sense. So with that one, I compromised. You know what I mean? So there's kind of a situation where one I compromised, one sort of pulled it back.
I'll just say, working on these 3 novels with this publisher. I mean, I've done, I put out a short story collection with an independent horror publisher years ago, and we've done work with lots of anthologies with publishers that are smaller press. And I don't think I've ever, I'm trying to think if I've ever had anything that I really wanted to push back on, but not really. And I think I've been very happy. Like, I think talk about compromise again, but kind of like in the editing sphere, at this point, I've been writing, I don't want to say professionally because I still have a day job, but like I've been writing and publishing for over 10 years now. And I'm very kind of, myself a pat on the back. I'm very happy with myself with that. When I first started doing this, I didn't finish my thought. I'm happy with, the thing I'm happy with myself about, I did not finish that thought yet. When I first started writing, as probably a lot of people are, I had thin skin. So when editors like pushed back on something, it was like, oh, I just don't think you know what I've been going for with this. And what I'm happy with myself for is that like, I did a lot of work to get far, far, far away from that mindset. Like, I still have a critique group to this day. I still get everything that I write beta read by multiple people. And it's not even like a conscious thing that I do anymore. I don't ever, really, truly, I don't ever get like precious or upset when somebody says something's not working on the page. I actually get like super interested. Like, I'm like, oh, like tell me more. Like, what wasn't working for you? Because I like to think that if it wasn't working for even just one person, like there's probably something, maybe it's not necessarily the full change that they're looking for, but something about that needs work. And some of the best changes to my last couple novels have been the sort of like bigger things that editors have kind of pushed me on. Like, I remember for Daughters of Block Island, I had just the kind of short summary about it is like a girl goes to an island to find her birth mother. And in the book, I had an entire chapter with the confrontation between the two of them. And my editor was like, I don't think that whole scene needs to be a chapter. I think it would be better if it was like not seen on the page and you just like allude to it over the next time. And at first I was like, what? Like, how can I not have that scene? And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of brilliant. And I at this point in my career, or whatever, my side career, I don't know what you want to call it, but I try to listen to every suggestion that is given to me.
Yeah, I actually have had you be my editor before. It was great edits. You're thorough, which I always like. But yeah, I think it's the thin skin, and that's something, and we've talked about a lot. Like I've taught classes on writing, and mostly focusing on giving and receiving critique. And so I come from an art school background, and so every day you do your thing and you put it on the wall and everyone just gets to say what they think about it. Just open, like, this isn't working, I like this, not this, whatever. And it's a very open space. And I think for a lot of writers, again, because it is very solitary and you're very close to your work, that it feels like a personal attack to get feedback of like, this isn't working. And like, this isn't working does not mean, and you should quit and burn this all and never tell anyone you wrote it. Usually it's like, oh no, I just think maybe this chapter could get moved around, or this character needs a little more work, or whatever. And I think, so I can't think of any time I've gotten feedback where I was like, or changes where I was like, absolutely not, and they're like, well, we are going this way. Like, I think a lot of times it is usually more of a conversation, or they'll suggest something, and then I'll say, I don't agree, but I do, like, if you're picking up this isn't working, like, what about this instead? I don't love your suggestion, but how about this? And usually you can find a compromise. And I often, like in critique classes, I call those speed bumps. It's like things when you're reading that stop you or catch your attention. It's like something about that needs to be fixed. And so I do think, and this is what I always like caution about the like fast to self-publish with having had like a writing background or like a writing class background, is that you haven't gotten a lot of that visceral critique of like, this isn't working, or this whole first chapter should go, or this character does not, work, and that kind of thing. And so it feels so much more intimate than it's just, and I like to think of like these works are wet clay. They're not finished. It's not that hard to change a character. You can work on this stuff and it only gets better. And so I think people flagging stuff, you don't have to do what they say, but I think you should appreciate that they're taking the time and noticing something's not working and sharing that with you, I think is positive. And that's like, it only makes work get better to get those extra eyes on it before it goes out into the world as a finished product. So I think trying to remove the preciousness in the way, like if it was your actual child and you're like, yeah, that kid's outfit is weird and he's not good at sports, and you're like, oh, I did, so, but they're also going to just do their own thing. Like you have to have a little bit of remove there, because otherwise, it's not going to be the best work. But you do need those extra eyes. And it's a dialogue. Like you're writing something, but if people aren't understanding that actually means that you failed. And I think that's where you're like, you don't understand what I meant. Like, right, you were supposed to tell me what you meant. I don't understand. Like that means the dialogue isn't working. And so I think a lot of times writers are quick to be like, well, then you don't understand me and I'm gone. It's like, well, no, that's not, that means you need to work to get them to understand it. So, I think that's, and the more you approach it that way, the less you'll have that conflict with getting those kind of notes, I guess, because then if an editor comes, it's not like, why are you trying to take this from me? It's like, more of a team effort that.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think everybody kind of covered all the points that I would make. I will say this because it kind of ties into two questions. If you're interested in writing stuff that's more extreme or more taboo, risky, the type of stuff that Aaron and I write, that's when you're going to get some blowback from traditional publishers. Even though that stuff sells and has a huge audience base, and we're even seeing that in film now with movies like Terrifier and things that just go balls to the wall, gore, intensity. It has that audience, but traditional publishers tend to not want to publish it. So you will get blowback on that. You will get people trying to make you trim things down. So if you don't want to, the self-publishing could be the way to go for you because of that. And that's all I got, I think.
What piece of advice would you give authors on going about deciding on royalties with their publisher?
we have a short answer to that. If you're with a traditional publisher, the royalties are industry standard, so they're gonna be the same across, like any of the bigger publishers.
Yeah, I've never encountered anywhere where you have to say in that. They just kind of like, here's the contract, these are our terms, and then you say, yeah. And that's even if you do it yourself, like with Amazon, it's like you're not negotiating with much there.
Well, I mean, working with middle level publishers, sometimes you can negotiate what you want, and not just the percentage that you get, but you can negotiate for, you know, the price of, like, if you want to get copies of your books to sell at conventions like this. I know a lot of, you know, bigger publishers, they don't give you much of a discount on that. I even know a friend of mine who's a writer who has become a, you know, big deal with traditional publishing and has a movie coming out. And he actually will buy in bulk from Amazon his own book that's put out by a big publisher because it's cheaper than getting it from the publisher. So it's kind of ridiculous. So you can work out with, you know, like some publishers, you can try to work out, okay, do I get this book at cost if I want some, or do I get it at cost plus $1 each copy? And, you know, also like your contributor copies, if you get 5 for free or 10 for free or whatever it is. So you can negotiate that way, but you are right, like there is an industry standard of a certain amount that you get. And then when it comes to, like if you're getting, like I've books published in 7 languages now, and you'll have a different amount of percentage of what you get for that because the publisher's doing way more work than you are with that. You've already written the book, it's already published in English. So they're taking the task of getting a translator, doing all that stuff. So you get a smaller amount of it. So it varies.
Oh yeah, I forgot, I did negotiate on the Spanish translation for Sleep Shay because someone had looked it over and they're like, yeah, those rates aren't great, see if they can do better. And I was like, you can do that? So I actually, although I was like, you can't do that. You can't have it in there, I forgot that time. But I countered and they were like, okay, and I said, oh, all right. But it was like literally a 2 cent. It was like a 10 cents to 12 cents. It wasn't like a big, yeah. So I guess you can, or you could try. And I do think, yeah, with author copies and things like that, like it never hurts to ask. Because the worst thing they'll say is no. If it's reasonable, like reasonable terms, I guess it wouldn't. You know, but I do think they do have the control as far as setting those standards for a lot of that.
Yeah, and I would say another important point to this would be ask around, ask your peers. Hey, like if you know, it's got to be somebody you know. You don't want to go prying financial information from strangers. But you know what I mean. Like if Chris has used an international publisher that I went through, I may reach out to him and say, hey, is this the rate you got, or like. You know what I mean? Kind of gauge, you know, if you could potentially.
You don't think you're going to get those Triana rates.
Well, that's another point too, right? And so, like, for an up-and-coming author who really doesn't have a lot established, right? You're probably going to get a lower rate. Whereas if you've had a book on Amazon that went viral or something like that, or like, you know, Chris has been writing for so long, he's very established. There is that wiggle room where, you know, I've asked publishers. And they've given me more. You know, it just depends. You have to kind of sell yourself and be like, well, you know, if I was to do it this way, you know, I would be making this. Like you can kind of pitch it almost. And like you guys said, the worst they can do is say no. But it's good to ask around too if you have friends in the industry.
Is there anything that completely blindsided you when you were going through the learning curves of publications?
I think, just another short answer. I think usually it takes so long to kind of carve out a career as a writer that by the time you get to the point where you're publishing a book and people are actually reading it, there's not much that can blindside you because like you've been doing it for a number of years and you've kind of, especially, you know, kind of like hit on it a little bit. We talked about like publishers that have folded or changed it. I mean, when you work with smaller independent presses, sometimes there can just be, you know, there's small independent businesses. There can be some drama and there can be, you know, things that happen and you just kind of get used to seeing it in the art community and just, you know, stay on your own path and stay away from the drama.
Yeah, I could just do a whole panel just on my personal stories of like, you know, publishing hell stories, but we won't because there's also a lot of fun in that. I think
that it is, I think the thing to be flexible and to kind of keep getting back on the horse is the main one, like that. It's a lot of this sort of stuff. It's a lot of like finishing something is so exciting, and then sending things out, and then getting rejections can be so gutting, and then getting an acceptance is so this, and then like there's some kind of delay or problem, and it's this, and then things come, and then they're misprint, and then you can't do it, and then it's this again, or like something is poorly reviewed, like, you know, it's like some big place is gonna cover it, and then they review it poorly, and it's like, you know, there's a lot of this because I think it's the challenge of being in a business, a creative business. So this is, you're not selling a product, like the product is something you made, and it is an art form, and I think I always feel a little uncomfortable when the way we talk about it can be too monetizing, because it is like you're spending so much time dumping this out of yourself and making something and caring about it, and so it is then hard to send it out on whatever its journey is, and I think that you know, you do build up some scar tissue from that over time and get used to it, but there is still like an endless, like, I think that's part of the game. And I know lots of like really successful career writers that are still every time, like every book, it's like this roller coaster. So I think it's just, that is part of the game, is just toughening up about that, or the book you think people are gonna love is not the one they love, or sells well is not the one anyone likes. Like, you know, and the one you like Lisa and Rhode is the one everyone loves. There's a lot of that too. So you just don't know.
Yeah, and I think hatred, hatred was a curveball. But hatred can be a good thing too, I will say, because that means you generated a
I think you
reaction.
should kind of explain
Yeah,
what you
it's
mean.
still-
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean, because I fucking hate you. I love him.
Yeah,
But, look, you know,
this answer, Ben.
no. Yeah, just explain what happened.
Yeah, well, I
To
mean,
some degree.
it's like if you release, if you're writing incendiary material, you know, people can have a very emotional and strong reaction, you know, and you can find suddenly millions, maybe not millions, like, you know, tens of thousands of strangers suddenly hate you, right? So you have to kind of be prepared for that in whatever you're writing. It doesn't necessarily have to be extreme horror, I don't think. I think this phenomenon happens in all genres, depending. I saw like a hockey romance book it happened with too.
Oh, it's like some romantic.
Oh, yeah.
People
There's some
really
crazy shit
kill
going on.
somebody about that. Yeah.
But yeah, so like to me, I wasn't expecting anyone to care about my book. Nonetheless, for it to get to that point of like pure outrage. So yeah, like going back to the thick skin, it's a business you have to have thick skin for. Not only for the editors that are kind of like giving you that feedback you need, but just the public who is gonna potentially misunderstand your story or just read that one-line review that it just in many cases isn't true. You know what I mean? So be ready for the slander.
One thing I think that blindsided me, or at least something I didn't exactly expect.
That's how much everyone loved your stuff. The love.
Absolutely, the love and tenderness, all the marriage proposals that I get. Was having to chase publishers for my royalties that they owed me.
Good point.
Yeah, that surprised me and pisses me off. So I've had a couple where they would end up paying me, but only when I was like, hey, you know, you're late, where are my royalties, where's my money? Bitch better have my money. You know, this is a business, I'm not your fucking friend, give me my money. And I've pulled my books from some of them. Now, like, I was like, I still get my money from you. You still owe me 6 months of royalties, but you're not allowed to publish my book anymore because you broke the contract. You didn't pay on time according to the contract. And I've had people try to argue them like, no, it's too late. No, you're not going to make it up to me. It's too late. You get one shot and then you're done.
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing to that too, because it's a good point. It's just, you know, there's a weird thing in writing and in the arts in general, I think, of like, oh, you should be happy that I published your book, that I believe, like, as if none of us are actually like successful almost, you know what I mean? It's kind of a slap in the face deal, and you'll definitely encounter that, especially when you're starting out. If you haven't established a brand or haven't had anything that has notoriety, you know, people act like they're doing you a favor almost.
And
So,
sometimes the author may feel that way. if you're not an experienced author, you're so excited to get your first book picked up that, you might be tempted to just sign any bullshit they put in front of you. But don't. Read it, talk to other writers, find out more of what you actually deserve.
You should be happy enough with the exposure. The fact that we're paying you on top of the exposure is, you get the money when you get
Hear
it.
that bullshit too.
Well, the one that bugs me on that, I mean, I can again do a whole panel just on that, just me, and who's wronged me on that, but that a lot of small publishers especially, they won't give you royalties unless you chase them down and ask. And they're like, oh, sorry, let me get that. And it's like, no, contractually it's supposed to be quarterly. And the thing that drives me crazy, they're like, oh, well, there weren't any sales. It's like, right, then send me a quarterly report that shows me 0, or 1, and it's like, you're gonna owe me like 8 cents. But you should be sending these out to everybody that you are publishing every quarter, as it says in your publisher. Okay, so I've worked with not all those in Lily Apologies, like over 40 or 50 small publishers. And I have gotten like 3 of those kinds of royalty statements, like a regular, and I'm always surprised when one of those comes through and you're like, oh, you're like a real business, as opposed to the 50 others that are surprised when you ask them. They're like, oh, well, we didn't. So I was like, can I see those numbers? Like, maybe I can help with that. Maybe we could like expand in different markets. And they're like, oh, I'll get back to you. And it's like, yeah, is this a real So I think that knowing your contracts and actually pushing back, even if you're small, isn't the worst thing. I mean, it's scary. It's like asking, like, if your chicken is not cooked all the way at a restaurant, but it's not in my nature to flag them down. But we should be flagging them down, and that's the same. Like, even if you're small, they are selling a product, and you are the product. Like, they shouldn't treat you like you're doing them a favor.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, I think changing who's actually in charge here. It's like, wait, you're selling me. Like,
Josh, do we have time for a couple of questions?
Sure we do.
Okay.
I don't even know what time it is. Whatever you want to do is
15
fine.
minutes, 12 minutes, or is it 10 up, or all the way to the hour?
We could stay for maybe like 5 more, 10 more? Okay.
So if anybody has any questions for these guys, publication related or just in general,
Yeah, just any questions, anything.
anything.
No, we should.
okay.
Well, we just asked for all this extra time, you guys.
So I was curious about, especially since it's changing so much, the role like social media plays in marketing your books, especially for maybe the genres that are kind of left of the mainstream. I'm thinking maybe just my algorithm, I know like the playground blew up on TikTok quite a bit. So I'm just curious, are you folks reaching out to like content creators, or is it sort of just like a flash of the pan, like someone just happened to pick up your stuff and ran with it, and all of a sudden the quality caught on and then it blew up?
The answer is right here. So, like, Anne is a content creator. She's done a lot of great work for our genre and books in general. So yeah, I think like building professional relationships with people that, again, you want to be respectful. You want to look at profiles and make sure like people are open to conversation. Some people will be like no DMs, so be aware of that kind of stuff. But I think it's incredibly important. It's the only reason really that I think I'm able to write for a living, is because of that social media aspect. Before it was the world of the gatekeepers, right? It was to make a movie, you needed, you needed a company to vet it, right? To music, right? With SoundCloud, books with Amazon. Everyone has the ball in their court now, depending on if you want to do the work. And social media is a critical element to that, because no matter who you are, whether you're the companies producing these things for the artists, they still reach out to all these influencers and people who are going to give candid opinions, because that's worth more, you know what I mean, than any book blurb or anything like that,
Yeah, and, when it comes to the social media, if you're, if you're going to be trying to promote your books, which of course you should, you want to be on there, even if you don't like social media. I'm not the biggest fan of it myself. It's very time consuming. Yeah, you. Yeah, but it's time consuming. But you have to do it because that's just the age that we live in. That's how a lot of people are going to discover your stuff. And also all the great content creators that are out there are enormous help by getting more people to read your stuff. So you want to make sure you're interacting with them. And you can also ask these content creators if if they review one of their books and they're like, oh, this book was awesome. You're like, hey, well, you just mentioned thank you so much. If you're interested, I can maybe send you a free copy of my latest book. If you're interested, you want to just throw it at people. You want to make sure, because a lot of them, they're in a to be read pile this big, and they may not have time for it. But you can always ask, and you could always send them stuff, and that's the world we're living now. Where social media is such a huge thing, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, whatever you use. If you're putting a book out, I recommend you're on all of them, and just at least if you're just putting, hey, here's my book. If you don't have time to write all sorts of things on them.
It's an important thing too to say, even if someone does accept your book, almost picture it in your mind like they're not going to read it, because you can't be that person that's harassing them every couple of weeks, like, oh, what'd you think of the book? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I see that mistake made very often, or people complaining about that publicly, and it's a really bad look. You're actually like defeating the purpose of it. You're undoing it even worse than it was when nobody knew you, because now you kind of have that rep,
I think also being okay with the fact that they might not love it. Like if you're getting real reviews, like from real people, like they might, and I think that's also part of it, because that has become an issue too, where reviewers get mad, or writers get mad, reviewers for giving real reviews. Because they're like, you're messing up my algorithm, and it's like,
No, I always say if I'm giving an ARC to someone, like this is in exchange for an honest review, but reviewers can give a negative review and give feedback without being horrible about it. If someone's just like, this is the worst piece of shit I ever read, then you're gonna be like, okay, I won't send them anything anymore. But if they're like, this one just didn't work for me, I liked his other book better, it's like, it's fine. Everybody has.
That is a real review.
It's a real review. It's totally legit. I don't expect one person to like every book that I write. It's just you have to accept that. There's plenty of writers that I love, but they have one or two books where I'm like, oh God, what the hell is this?
And the algorithms have made a lot of that stuff annoying, because like I very rarely ever have given a 5-star review, just like in life. Like I don't have like meals or experience. I think I'm like a 4-star. I feel like 5s are saved for some like life-changing event or something. And so even my husband, I remember sometimes he's like, I need some reviews of something. I do. He's like, you only gave me 4. I'm like, it needs to feel real. And also I felt it was a 4.
A few before in our marriage.
That is, that's positive. But those 4s and like 3s are seen as negative in a lot of those algorithms. Whereas I feel like a 3.5 or a 4 is a perfectly reasonable, positive review. But a lot of writers, it's tricky, and readers now, when they see like a 3.75, they're like, oh, so everyone hated it. It's like, it's not a bad review. But so I think that's also tricky. There's like an expectation for like an endless 5-star kind of energy, and I don't know, I just don't tend to believe those. And I tend to, when I read book reviews, I usually read the 1s and 2s first anyway. I don't tend to read the 5s.
I'll take it a step further. 1 star.
That's saying, if you like my book, definitely give me a 5. That's not what I'm saying. But that's for me personally, but you guys are all 5 strong.
No, I feel like if you get a 1-star review and they were like, this is the most revolting, disgusting, this guy should be in prison. Like, I've gotten that one plenty of times.
But you can use that. That's an advertisement.
That's what I'm saying. People see that, they're like, what the fuck is in this book? Like, and then they have to see it, right? It's the Streisand effect or whatever, right? Like, don't look where my house is, Barbara Streisand said, and all these people looked it up online.
I didn't know that. That's fantastic. But yeah, no, that's absolutely true. A negative could be a positive if it's something, if they're saying this was just poorly written, it's not. But if they're saying this is the most shocking, offensive thing I've ever read, there's going to be people out there, particularly horror fans, are going to want to know what it is and why. That's how I discovered a couple of writers that I really like. I remember when I was about 17, I read an article about like the top 10 most offensive books, and I read about how feminists were going into bookstores and ripping them up and burning them and stuff, and I was like, well, I need all of these. So it was like American Psycho by Brendan Ellis.
That's the big I guess when I was doing the math.
Yeah.
Story of the Eye, maybe?
Yeah, that's a shocking one. I don't remember what all that was on the list, but the two that I remember is the ones that I hadn't heard before and I went and I got. One was American Psycho, and the other one was Tales of Ordinary Madness by Charles Bukowski. And I ended up loving those books and reading more from those authors. Not necessarily because it pissed somebody else off, but when I hear that many people are getting pissed off by something, that's usually the books that you want to read, because those are the ones that are pushing boundaries, and they may not necessarily be good, they may just be shot for the sake of shot and be garbage, but those are the ones that are pushing people's buttons, and those are doing something new and fresh and original, so yeah, that can definitely be helpful.
I just want to say too really quickly, there have been a lot of great comments kind of like for using reviews, whether good or bad, in good ways. You also, also have to be on social media. I agree with like most of what has been said here, but I have stopped reading reviews because I don't write extreme horror, so I'm not going to take like a 1-star review and be able to put it up and get that sort of inflammatory response where it's going to help me.
I'm a super weird reader. They're like, oh my God, that was the most disgusting.
Yeah, I'm really confused. I don't understand. They must have read the wrong book. But yeah, the thing I strive to do now is like to engage in social media as much as possible to help out my book. And maybe if it's a reviewer that I sent a book to, or that I know that like the publicist for my publisher sent to, and I've been kind of waiting to see if it's like a bigger, on a platform, I might share the review. But I actually don't look at the reviews anymore, just because sometimes, we're writers, words mean a lot to us, and sometimes you can get like negative reviews stick in your head more than the positives. So right after my first novel came out, it was actually the greatest thing that ever happened to me. My first novel came out and it was like 3 hours in and I got some ridiculous review that was like, they clearly had not read the book. It was just like insane, calling me names, or just one of these bonkers reviews, and I was just like, this is the equivalent of that like crazy road rage person that there's something else going on with them. It's not just about you. I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to read your reviews anymore. And it's been kind of the greatest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I don't even really read. I love reviewers. I appreciate them. They're awesome. But I don't read a lot of reviews, even for stuff that isn't mine. There's other reviews for other stuff. If I'm interested in a book or a movie or whatever, it's like I don't watch trailers for movies because they give everything away. That's the reason I stay away from trailers and reviews. It's like I feel like it gives too much away.
I'm with you on that. I just get tagged in these crazy reviews sometimes, so it's impossible for me not to see them sometimes. But anyway, we're coming up on time. We want to give the other people, just thank everybody. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's give it up for Am. We go to Rose on TikTok. Her stuff's great, so make sure you check it out. Make sure you follow her. Thanks to Horror Depot.
Oh yeah.
I'm here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.